David flourished circa 1000 BCE, second ruler of the United Kingdom of ancient Israel and Judah. He founded the Judean dynasty and united all the tribes of Israel under a single monarch. His son Solomon expanded the empire that David built. David is an important figure in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Background and sources. The primary evidence for David's career consists of several chapters in the books 1 and 2 Samuel in the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. Many of the Psalms are also attributed to him, a tribute to his legendary skill as a poet, harpist, and hymnist. Material evidence for his reign, while a matter of intense debate among scholars, is scant. Some scholars claim to have discovered artifacts that corroborate the biblical account of David's kingdom. Others assert that the archaeological record strongly suggests that David was not the grand ruler of a rising kingdom but merely a gifted tribal leader of a pastoral, rather than urban, society. A fragment from a stone stela mentioning the House of David, a reference to his political dynasty, was inscribed more than a century after the traditional date of his reign and is not accepted by all scholars. The following article is largely drawn from the biblical account of David's reign. Early life. According to 1 Samuel, David was the youngest son of Jesse, a man of Bethlehem, and served as a shepherd for his father before beginning his career as an aide at the court of Saul, Israel's first king. When Israel came into conflict with the Philistines, a people from a neighboring region, David's brothers went to fight for King Saul. Young David would travel back and forth to the camp to bring his brothers food and supplies. According to 1 Samuel chapter 17, Goliath, a heavily armed Philistine giant, challenged Saul for 40 days to send out a man to fight him. No one would face this warrior until David, armed only with a sling and stones, volunteered. David hit the giant in the forehead with a stone and killed him. He continued to distinguish himself as a warrior in the ongoing battles against the Philistines, and his resultant popularity aroused Saul's jealousy. Fearing that the people would make David king, Saul plotted to kill him. With the help of his loyal friend Jonathan, Saul's eldest son, David fled into southern Judah and Philistia, on the coastal plain of Palestine, where, with great sagacity and foresight, he began to lay the foundations of his career. As an outlaw with a price on his head, David led the life of a Robin Hood on the desert frontier of his tribal domain in Judah, in the south of the Levant. He became the leader and organizer of a group of other outlaws and refugees, who progressively ingratiated themselves with the local population by protecting them from other bandits or, in case they had been raided, by pursuing the raiders and restoring the possessions that had been taken. Although the boy David was anointed by the prophet Samuel as the future king of Israel, 1 Samuel chapter 16, his actions in exile helped ensure that he would be invited to become king as the true successor of Saul after Saul and Jonathan were slain in battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa. Kingship. The exploits of David and the events of his monarchy are related in 2 Samuel. After mourning the death of Saul and executing an Amalekite who claimed to have killed the former king, David began to consolidate his position as the successor to Saul. He was proclaimed king of Judah in Hebron while Ishbosheth, Saul's eldest surviving son, reigned in northern Israel, and a long war of attrition developed between the two houses. Ishbosheth's position became exceedingly insecure following the death of his general, Abner. He was eventually beheaded by his own courtiers, whom David, in turn, executed for murdering the last ruler of the house of Saul. David made a covenant with the elders of northern Israel and was then anointed as king over all of Israel. He next conquered the Jebusite, Canaanite, stronghold of Jerusalem, which he made the capital of the new United Kingdom. He selected this city as his new capital because it was a neutral site and neither the northerners nor the southerners would be adverse to the selection. From the very beginning of his reign, David showed the political astuteness and acumen that made for him a reputation that has continued for 3,000 years. Expansion of the Davidic Empire. The latter two-thirds of 2 Samuel contains the account of the reign of David from Jerusalem. After establishing Jerusalem as his capital, he defeated the Philistines so thoroughly that they were never again a serious threat to the Israelites' security, and he annexed the coastal region. He went on to establish an empire by becoming the overlord of many small kingdoms bordering Israel, including Edom, Moab, and Ammon. His minor empire stretched from Egypt in the south to Lebanon in the north and from the Mediterranean Sea in the west to the Arabian Desert in the east. He thus controlled the crossroads of the great empires of the ancient Near East. His second act of political astuteness was to bring the sacred Ark of the Covenant, the supreme symbol of Israelite religion, to Jerusalem. David was unable to build a temple, but, with the Ark in Jerusalem, the city became both the political and the religious cult center of his kingdom. David's great success as a warrior and empire builder was marred by interconnected family dissensions and political revolts. To tie together the various groups that constituted his kingdom, David took wives from them and created a harem. The resultant family was an extreme departure from the family in the consanguineous context, the traditional clan structure. David's wives were mostly completely alien to one another, and his children were without the directing support of established social patterns that provided precedents for the resolution of conflict or for establishing the rights of succession. Though he showed generosity to Mephibosheth, the sole surviving son of the house of Saul, David showed his weakness for the beauty of Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, one of his generals. After ensuring Uriah's death by sending him onto the front lines in a battle with the Ammonites, David married Bathsheba, who had become pregnant by the king. When the prophet Nathan came to David and told him of a rich man's unjust actions toward a poor man, David's response was one of anger and a demand for justice, whereupon Nathan said, "You are the man," and that God would exact retribution by not allowing the child to live. David then repented. Bathsheba later conceived and bore another child, Solomon, who was to be the future king of Israel. The authors of the biblical accounts, in 1 and 2 Samuel, of David's political career display a deep insight into the character of a man who could make an indelible personal impression in a specific situation. Along with that ability to exploit the immediate situation in the service of his momentary requirements, he possessed the knack of making his conduct in particular situations serve his persistent and long-range aims.